Welcome everybody again to another Sunday school lesson here at the Arlington First Vietnamese United Methodist Church and the Arlington Forest United Methodist Church. We hope that you all have been having a wonderful Sunday, and we are going to begin today with a little kind of a art lesson, I guess you could say. Because what we are going to be talking about today is a Bible verse that's going to include a story about a conversation between two people by the name of Philip and Nathaniel. And both of them are in their way to meeting Jesus. And there's an interesting thing that happens in their conversation that we're going to discuss. But before we get into that, we're going to do a little exercise that's kind of helpful when it comes to thinking about how we interact with other people. And are we doing the best things that we can do in respect of that? So one thing I'm going to have you do is, if you are at home, and especially if you've got someone else in the house that would be willing to do this with you, it's a really, really fun and good exercise. For most of us, I love drawing, so I find it entertaining. But what I want you to do is just grab a piece of paper, which my background is hiding. So let me remove the background. And that way we can see the piece of paper. Let me get that in there. There we go. So grab a piece of paper. I just grabbed a notebook, but if you have an actual like sketch pad or drawing pad, grab that. And you can use a marker or a pen or a pencil, whatever you'd like, or even crayons or watercolors, anything. And I want you to draw a quick picture of yourself. It doesn't have to be anything perfect. So I'm just going to start with mine. I'm going to do the little oval shape for the face. I've got my hair tied back today, so I've just got some wispies on the side. And we're just going to do a quick little sketch of ourselves. And I'm just going to do my face. I'm not going to do much more than that. Let's see. And my nose is always, I think, kind of big. So I'm going to make a big nose. And I know that my one eye is usually smaller than the other. So I'm going to try and make my eyes look that way too. And let's see, I'll put my lips on there. Whoa, I made my lips really big, so we'll fix that. Let me see here. And I know my bottom lip isn't really big, so I'm just going to make it like this. Okay, so if this is my self-portrait, the picture that I've drawn of how I see myself, let me put my little earrings in here. There we go. So here's my little drawing I did of myself. And what I want you to do is take a look at that picture. Tell me what your thoughts are of that person there. And tell me what is something that you're really happy about, or something that you're maybe not the most happy about. Okay, so take a moment, think about that, and hold your picture up. Share it with those around you. And then I want you to, if there's more than one person in the room, hang up the pictures or just hold them up. And the thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a minute and we're going to say something nice about each one of those portraits that's up there. Okay, so since I don't really have anybody else here in my room with me, and we're going to be saving this for sharing online, I'm just going to point up here to portrait of my children and I together. So if I had each of them write their own or draw their own self-portrait and hang it up, I would go around to each one of them and give a compliment or something that I think is cool or neat about each one. So I'm going to go with Jacob here. And Jacob, I am so proud of who you are as a person, that you take care of your friends. And I love your uncanny sense of humor, where you always seem to be a walking and living meme. And then here I have Denali. And Denali, I am proud to see that you are embracing your talents and your gifts that you have, both with taking care of friends and looking out for others as you serve in the military, just as Jacob and Harry do, but also that you are doing the things that make you happy, like rebuilding your motorcycle engine or building your bed frame. And then Harry, I want to tell you how proud I am of the man that you are becoming, and that you are working hard to be the best adult that you can be. He's my oldest, and so he's the first one who is also now married. And I'm proud that you will be soon building your own home. And then Mary Lou, my one and only daughter, other than my daughter-in-law, who is also a daughter, but she is the one that I gave birth to. So Mary Lou, I want to tell you how proud I am, or how neat it is that you have so much joy and energy, and that you have a drive to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. So that's the kind of thing I want you to do with your self-portraits that you're sharing with your family in your house, or your siblings if you have them. Mom and dad, if you're joining in, this is a fun task that you can do together. So here's what I want you to consider. We're going to go through and read our Bible reading for today. And our scripture reading is from the book of John. It's the first book of John, chapter 4. I think I have it written here wrong. Let me fix that. And I'm going to be sharing, I think it's the Common English translation is the one that I will be sharing. So I'm going to share that screen for you. Let me get to the right screen here. If I can get my screens to cooperate. There we go. So if I go in here and do our little slideshow. And of course, it's sharing it on the other screen. So we'll just do it this way. Oh, well. So we have our first book of John, chapter 4, verses 43 to 51. And it's the Living Bible translation. So let's read this together. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and told him, "Come with me." Philip was from Bethsaida, Andrew and Peter's hometown. Philip now went off to look for Nathanael and told him, "We have found the Messiah, the very person Moses and the prophets told about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph, from Nazareth." "Nazareth!" exclaimed Nathanael. "Can anything come good from there?" "Just come for yourself and see," Philip declared. As they approached, Jesus said, "Here comes an honest man, a true son of Israel." "How do you know what I am like?" Nathanael demanded. And Jesus replied, "I could see you under the fig tree before Philip found you." Nathanael replied, "Sir, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel." Jesus asked him, "Do you believe all this just because I told you I had seen you under the fig tree? You will see greater proofs than this. You will see heaven open and the angels of God coming down and forth to me, the Messiah." So we have our verses where we are introduced once again to Philip and then to Nathanael. So let's go through this. Our story has two main characters. We have Philip from Bethsaida, and let me do the stop share. And we're going to try this one more time to get it to work the way it's supposed to. I apologize. My computer is not cooperating the way it usually does. All right, so let's try this again. And we are going to do our slideshow this way. Okay, so right now we are going to go through and review the Bible verse that we had, and we're going to look at it. So we had our first, and I need to move my plant so I can see my things. There we go. We had two main characters in our story. We have Philip and Nathaniel. And Nathaniel is the one who was sitting under the fig tree. And in the story, Philip goes and finds Nathaniel and tells him something. So what do we know first about each one of these people? Well, the first thing that we were told is that Philip is from Bethsaida, and Nathaniel is from Canaan in Galilee. These are two things that are kind of important because they are from different areas. So they grew up a little bit different. Their views on the world are going to be different. And the customs that they have will likely be different as well. So I want you to think about that with your friends and neighbors. What kinds of views or differences do you often find between you and your friends or those in your family even who have a different opinion on things? I know a lot of people talk politics, and sometimes that can provide a lot of differences between people. So we know that these differences can sometimes cause arguments or discomfort between each people. Now, Philip is going to find Nathaniel. And when he goes there, he says to him, and he says, "We have found the Messiah, the very person Moses and the prophets told about. And his name is Jesus, the son of Nazareth," or the son of Joseph of Nazareth. So our two characters, again, two different places, two different things, and they have two different responses to it. Philip first says, "This is the Messiah, the very person that Moses and the prophets told about." And do you remember what Nathaniel's response was? And he said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" So we found out that they're coming to meet the Messiah. And what kind of tone do you think that it was that Nathaniel was using? What kind of things do you think he was expressing in his comment? So we have Philip who said, "We found the Messiah." And we have Nathaniel who's like, "Can anything good come from Nazareth? Nazareth, that place?" Well, you could look at what he said as being rude, cocky even, boisterous, mean, joking, mocking, condescending. But why do you think he said what he said? Could be a lot of reasons. Could be he was trying to sound really cool. He was trying to impress Philip or the others around him, maybe even a girl that he liked. He was trying to hide his own nervousness or fear of meeting Jesus. He has heard that people from Nazareth are bad or dirty or unimportant, maybe. Maybe that's what he was taught, or how the people in his town believe of people of Nazareth. And he may have had an experience with someone from Nazareth that wasn't good. He may have had somebody that mistreated him, or like if there was a teacher from Nazareth and that teacher was just really tough on him and he didn't like it, he may have had an attitude about it. And it could just be that he was taught that the people from there, or Nazareth, are easy to make fun of or should be made fun of, that it's okay to talk about people from that town in that way. So we have been introduced to different people from different views, and one of them is a view where he is willing to meet Jesus and he has an open heart about it. And then there's Nathaniel, who was a little rude and not necessarily sounding the most positive. And do you remember whose hometown it was that was the hometown that Jesus came from? Or whose home? I guess I just kind of gave it away there. So whose hometown are we looking at here? We had Philip and Nathaniel, who were from different towns, but who was it that came from Nazareth? Do you remember? It was Jesus. Jesus was the one that came from Nazareth. He's the one that told us about God and is expressing God's plan for all of us. And here Nathaniel and Philip are meeting him and understanding that they are meeting the Messiah. They are meeting the Son of God. And yet Nathaniel becomes with the one attitude that he did. So what does that maybe tell us about interacting? Because it's unusual the way that Jesus approached it. So one thing that we can talk about is when people come at a situation with an attitude, or whether it be positive or negative, those can be what we call prejudices, in that we have an already assumed way of looking at people from a certain place, or people who speak a certain way, or move a certain way, or even look a certain way. In fact, if you see people with white hair, you tend to treat them differently than people who may have the cool kind of white hair where they colored it, or brown hair or black hair, curly or short. You may treat each one of them a little differently. Now, we may not in our own group here have specific prejudices, but try to look at some of the people that you have met over time and think about whether or not you treated them a little different than your friends or people you've seen more often. The other thing we want to think about is, what about what we see on TV or in movies or when you're scanning the internet? What are the common ways that you see people? See, because prejudices are oftentimes taught. It may be our parents, it may be relatives, it may be a town that we're in. There's a lot of different things that could cause us to have prejudices or predetermined ideas on something. Some examples of on TV, and especially if you go back to like when I was a child back in the 80s and the 70s, and even the 90s, you would see in most movies and TV shows, people who are of an Asian descent are usually portrayed as the computer nerd or as a martial arts expert. And African Americans are usually shown as thugs or gang members or someone not treated well or somebody who's not very successful, and usually somebody who's poor. And then people with Russian or German accents in our TV shows or even in memes that we laugh about are often shown as the bad guy or a mob boss. These are what we call stereotypes. And while they in and of themselves may not be racist, they certainly don't help with it either. In fact, they can help and encourage people to have certain prejudices. For example, if someone does nothing but tell you that you are wrong, if all day long there's somebody in your life who's always telling you, no matter whether you're right or wrong, that you're always wrong, and just gives everyone else the praise and encouragement, but not to you. In fact, they make fun of you. If that was happening, how would you feel? Would you feel good about yourself? Or would you start to believe the things that you're hearing over and over again? Where if somebody wasn't doing that to you, you might make your self-portrait And you might be proud of what you've drawn. You may be happy with the picture you have. But if somebody's constantly telling you that you're a failure, that you're wrong, you may look at this and all you think about are the bad things that you see in the picture and not the good things, which is why we did that exercise of looking at each of the pictures in the room and saying something nice. What if we had changed that and instead of saying something nice about each picture, we said something mean? Would we be encouraging people to think about certain people in a wrong way? Probably. Now imagine if in that same scenario you were at school and all you're hearing every day is that you're bad, that you're not good enough. Are you going to do well in school? And what about at home? If at home all the time people are telling you those things, are you going to want to be at home? Or are you going to automatically decide in your head, home is not a good place to be? These are the kinds of things that can train our minds into looking at specific people or cities or towns or countries with a predetermined thought or a prejudice that they are, a specific way. So I want you to look back and think about your interactions, let's say at school or playing in the neighborhood. Have you ever came across someone that you hadn't really known before, and you simply just by what they looked like or where you knew they came from, did you decide already that they were somebody of a specific type? Or did you already decide you were going to treat them differently than what you have been treating others around you? It's not bad that you've made those thoughts. It's a natural thing for us to do. We want to categorize people to make it easy to understand them. But the danger is when we put them in categories and our categories limit our vision of them from being something other than positive, we are automatically setting ourselves up for disaster when we have met those people. And by the same token, have you ever had somebody that you just met for the first time who treated or talked to you differently because they assumed you were a certain type of person? And what in our conversation between Nathaniel and Philip, what if Nathaniel had walked away because he thought in his head, Nazareth? I'm not dealing with anybody from Nazareth, and he just got and walked away. He would never have met Jesus. Could you imagine the thing that would be so cool of meeting Jesus? It is 1,000 times or more exciting than if your favorite rock star or movie star was sitting on the other side of the room and somebody says, hey, let's go meet this person. For instance, The Rock. Let's go meet this person who's from Hawaii. And in my mind, I go, Hawaiians do nothing but wear grass skirts. I'm not dealing with them. I'd walk away and miss my chance to meet the movie star that I like. How would you feel? Would you find out later that this guy was amazing, does good things for people, is a great actor, super strong? Would you look at that later and go, wow, I missed an opportunity? You probably would. And that is small compared to not meeting Jesus. So Nathaniel was honest with himself. He knew he didn't already like people from Nazareth, but he was going to meet this person anyway. He decided, this is what I think, but it could be different. Let's go with it. And when your last encounter with God, that could be praying, what was your impression? And when you are praying about situations like that, where you're supposed to meet somebody and you're not sure about them, do you get an opinion or a thought that maybe you should forget about the things that are making you nervous and just go on? Like, for instance, Philip in this one, when Nathaniel said, people from Nazareth, Philip just calmly said, just come and see. In other words, Jesus is not the kind of guy you would think he'd be coming from Nazareth. He's different. Just wait and see. So he goes. With us, we can do the same thing with God. When we have a moment with God, you can sometimes hear or feel or just get an impression that God is telling you something. Did you have one like that? Is it something you'd be willing to share with everyone? Sometimes we call it a God moment. It can be things like, I got a gift that I was upset about. Somebody bought me a car tire and I was like, why do I need a car tire? My car's fine, but I have it, put it in my car and I keep it there, whatever. I'm mad, it takes up space. But I drive down the road and I get a flat tire. And instead of having to put the little donut on, I have an actual tire now. That would be kind of like a God moment when we realize this thing that we thought was horrible or annoying or frustrated was actually something that was provided for us to save me from a situation that would have been difficult to handle. Because car tires are not cheap. They're expensive. So that's one way. And let's reread the conversation between Nathanael and Jesus. In verses 47 and 51, let me grab those. 47 through 51. Bring those up so you can see them. There we go. As they approached Jesus, said, "Here comes an honest man, a true son of Israel." "How do you know what I'm like?" Nathanael demanded. And Jesus replied, "I could see you under the fig tree before Philip found you." You see, at first, Nathanael went, "Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth?" But Philip replied with a nice redirection of his thought process. And he said, "Come on, just see for yourself." And that's when Jesus then labeled Nathanael as an honest man, a true son of Israel. What does that tell you about what was going on in that story as far as the thought process of the prejudices? If you were Nathanael, how would you feel about what Jesus just said? If you just said something kind of rude and condescending to somebody, and their response was to just call you an honest and good person. Or in this case, if you said something rude to somebody who was from Washington, D.C., and their response was, "Well, there goes an honest guy from Arlington." If I say it like that, it doesn't sound very good or nice. Might actually start an argument. Or I could say, "There goes an honest man from Arlington." Two different ways of saying it, but they mean different things. So we can convey our opinions of things both with our words and with our tone, and also with our actions. When we encounter Jesus, our lives are forever changed. Just like Nathanael's may have been forever changed at this moment because he was called an honest and true son of Israel. That may have refocused how he encountered other people. Now let's think about in this story with meeting Jesus or having a moment with God where he says or does something for you that can transform your life. How can we use this story of the calling of Philip and Nathanael to inspire us in our lives for more, to live more for Jesus this week? Think about that. If we were in this situation, or if we hear this story again, how can that encourage us to live our lives more for Jesus this week? I want you to write those thoughts down on a piece of paper and put it somewhere where you'll see it during this week to help remind you. Think about it this way. If the message that we're learning here is that we should be honest, number one, and number two, we should also understand that we oftentimes have prejudices and that we need to look past those when we meet and see other people. So in other words, don't assume the worst. It's kind of like the story, I'm sure you've heard people say, don't judge a book by its cover. Just like you may see an ugly looking book on the shelf, but when you open it, the story inside may be exciting and wonderful and empowering. That's the kind of thing that we can use this week to help lead us towards living more for Jesus. Now, you may be wondering, how does that help us to live more for Jesus? Because we are learning to approach things with love and with peace instead of with aggression or anger or frustration or negativity. In other words, we're trying to have a more positive outlook. That will lead us to live in the way that Jesus had sent us. Now, we're also going to share a little video that's on YouTube, and I want you guys to take a look at this video. See if I can get it to play here. Go to this one. Okay, I can't get that link to open. Let me go to it this way. My mouse is not cooperating either today. I apologize. I would have had this up sooner. And for some reason now it's not letting me go to it. All right, let's try it this way.
Hey everyone, Farah from Zoom here. On this brief video, we're going to show you how you can leverage our...
There we go. There we go. Now I got it to work. So now I'm going to share the screen. So what did you think was going on with this story? I thought it was pretty a good one. And for those that may be looking for this online on YouTube, if you search for Ian, I-A-N, by Mundoloco, it's Mundoloco. When we share this online, we'll share the link for it as well. So what's happening at the beginning of the video? At the beginning of that video, we got a chance to meet or see a little boy by the name of Ian. And he is trying to play in the park, just like all of the other children, but he's having difficulty. If we remember, he was sitting at the picnic table and he was trying to hold on to the cup, but when somebody started to mock him a little bit, he got nervous and his hand shook, and then the cup fell and he was embarrassed. Have you ever felt like Ian in those situations where you felt like you didn't belong, whether it because you felt like you didn't belong or because people behaved in a way that made you feel that way? Like when that little boy started to chuckle and point his finger and laugh, or when people would start to play with you and then just pretend like you're not there. Have you ever felt left out like that or alone? What did that feel like? How did you feel on the inside? Some people may have said sad or angry or hurt or challenged. And why do you think that people treat others who are different from themselves in a different way? Do you think it's just because they're different? Is it that they are difficult to deal with and that's why we treat them differently? Or is it because it forces us to change the way we do things or look at things differently? There's a lot of reasons that different people do it, and each person's view of why they treat others differently who are different than them varies from person to person. And again, like we said before, it's going to be based a lot on our own prejudices and our own predetermined ideas of what somebody should and could be. And then at the end of the video, what happens? Do you remember? Ian tries to stand and he falls, and then everybody laughs. But this time, instead of just getting upset and leaving or disappearing into the background, he fights a little bit, doesn't he? He digs into the ground and he tries really hard not to be pulled away from everyone and be on the other side of the fence, to be left behind a barrier, to be separated from everyone. But that little girl comes first and grabs his hand, and then another child, and then another and another, leaning forward and helping him and trying to bring him into their circle. But what's amazing is that instead of them pulling him into their circle, they got pulled into his. They got pulled into his side of that fence that was keeping them apart. So in other words, they got a chance to see the world from his point of view, to see what it's like to be with him and to be him, and think of him as who he is, not who we assume or want him to be. And once they did, that barrier and that fence disappeared, didn't it? And then the kids were all able to go to the park and play together, and everybody accepted that Ian was in a chair, but that he can still be played with and enjoyed his company, whether there was a chair or not. Because while he was a little different than everybody else, because not everybody has the chair, but that didn't mean that he couldn't be with everyone else. So what can we learn from this video to help us to be more like Jesus? Well, you may be thinking of a few words. Does being friendly come to mind? What about loving, or being open-minded, or caring, or empathetic? Empathetic means feeling the feelings for other people, understanding who they are, reaching out from inside to them, or feeling a little bit of what they feel. Those are all things that we can use in following what Jesus taught us. Because the most important thing that Jesus taught us is he said that there is no commandment greater than this one, and that is to love your neighbor as you would yourself. So if those children at the beginning of the video had started off with loving Ian the way that they love themselves, would he have been pulled through that fence the way he was? Probably not. If they had started from the beginning with loving him as they love themselves, they all would have been able to play together without that separation of labeling each other as different and not understanding each other. So let's think about that. Think about how we talk to other people, how we look at other people. What are our thoughts? And work on practicing on having our first thoughts be ones of love and friendship and not anger or mocking and not fear either, because fear leads us to negative things. So let's bow our heads and pray that Jesus can help us this week from what we've seen in the video, from what we've seen in how Philip and Nathaniel talked to each other and how Jesus spoke to them. And let's pray that we can learn to be more like Jesus this week. Thank you, Jesus, for being with us once again today. And thank you for the message that you have shared with us today about being more open in our hearts and in our minds and in our actions. Help us to live more like you. Help us to get rid of and destroy prejudices that we see around us and those that we may have of our own. Help us to understand that we need to love our neighbors just as much as we love ourselves in order to have peace and friendship and unity in the world around us. We thank you for your love and your example of how to love one another. And we will practice this week in being loving and good and kind people to all of our neighbors and not just our family and friends. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.